Good morning. We are live from Council Chamber. Before we begin, I'll go over the emergency response plan for this room. In an emergency, everyone must evacuate through the nearest safe exit. Those seated in the gallery may take direction from security to evacuate. Council takes direction from the meeting clerk to evacuate. After evacuating the room, please proceed to the nearest building exit and go to a muster point. Do not take an elevator or walk through the city room. Anyone with limited mobility should identify themselves to security or the meeting clerk during an evacuation. Finally, please speak with security or the meeting clerk if you require first aid. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. I would like to call this meeting to order and do a roll call of council colleagues. Councillor Salvador.
Good morning.
Councillor Hamilton.
Good morning.
Councillor Jans.
Good morning.
Councillor Wright.
Good morning.
And we are here as well with our other colleagues. Councillor Principe is in Chamber Hall.
Good morning.
Thank you. And I'll go through the list of Councillor Knack.
Good morning.
Councillor Stevenson.
Good morning.
Councillor Rice.
Good morning.
Councillor Tang.
Good morning.
Okay, that is it for now. Adoption of the agenda. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. I will move the agenda with, I can't see if there's changes, my apologies. So I'm going to move the agenda. And if there are changes, someone can make an amendment.
Yeah, with the just to adjourn at 2 p.m. Okay.
With change of orders to adjournment at 2 p.m.
Yeah, thank you.
And there is also a replacement attachment one
Attached
on
7.1?
item
Okay.
7.1.
Got it. Okay, it's right on the on the display now. Okay. Okay, please vote.
Yes, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Jans. We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Approval of the minutes. Councillor Salvador, you want to do that?
I'll move the approval of the minutes from the February 28th, 2024 Executive Committee meeting and the March 8th, 2024 Executive Committee meeting non-regular.
Okay, any errors or omissions? Seeing none, please vote.
Yes, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Protocol items. I do have one. Good morning, everyone. I would like to take a moment to recognize the passing of Canada's 18th Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Brian Mulroney, on February 29th. Whenever a political figure passes, it is common to reflect on their legacy and to re-examine both their accomplishments and shortcomings during their time in office. We do this for a number of reasons: to celebrate their life, to consider their place in our history, and to contextualize their decisions, since we can no longer ask about them. While this is an important part of remembering those who held positions of power, I will struggle to reflect on Minister Mulroney's life without a fair bit of bias. In the late 1980s, when I was only a permanent resident in Canada, I returned to India and was unlawfully arrested for my political activism. The Indian government labeled me a terrorist and I spent nearly 2 years in prison, 18 months of which were in solitary confinement. When the news of my imprisonment began to spread, my family did everything in their power to help me. They reached out to elected officials in Canada, including the late David Kilgour, a member of Parliament for Edmonton at the time. Mr. Kilgour took my story all the way to the Prime Minister, Mr. Mulroney, who agreed they should try to assist me. From there, the Canadian government used its influence to help clear my name in India and eventually secure my release. They did this all for me, a young man they had never met, an immigrant, a man who wasn't even a citizen of their country. This might not have been a popular thing for Minister Mulroney to do, but it stands as a testament to his integrity and leadership. So while others will remember him by analyzing his political career, I will remember him as the principled man who selflessly helped free me from wrongful imprisonment on the other side of the world. Like I said, I come to this with my own biases. But there's one important lesson, particularly for elected officials, that can be gleaned from this story and Minister Mulroney's whole political life. It is a lesson that has stuck with me, driven me since I was freed from that prison in 1990. No matter your political stripes, no matter where you fall on a given debate, we all have the capacity to help others. And as elected officials, our sole responsibility is to help others, regardless of whether they are a constituent or whether they voted for us or even if they disagree with us. Mr. Mulroney taught me that we come to positions of power with the responsibility to help as many people as we can, not just the one who helped us get here. I will remember and honor him for reminding myself of this often. May he rest in peace. Thank you. With that, are there any other protocol items? No. Select items for debate. Councillor Wright?
Thank you very much. I'd like to select item 7.1, and since we have speakers, item 7.4, please.
So 7.4, 7.3, and 7.2 are cross-referenced. Do you want to select all of them?
Oh, I guess we'll need to. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
I will select 7.7 only to speak. Okay, I see no other selections, and I will go to, can someone move the balance, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Salvador. Please vote on the balance.
Yes, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. And we have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Can you please read back to us what we have already approved?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Sohi. This morning, Executive Committee has passed the recommendations of the following reports without debate. Item 5.1, review of the Good Neighbor Plan with a revised due date of to be determined. Item 5.2, financial loss during major construction projects draft policy with a revised due date of June 19th, 2024. Item 5.3, Edmonton Sport and Cultural Attraction Plan Update with a revised due date of April 10th, 2024. Item 5.4, Destination Marketing and Attraction Activities by City-Funded Entities with a revised due date of April 10th, 2024. Item 7.5, Feasibility Study Village at Ice District Lands. Item 7.6, Sale of Land Below Market Value Stillwater. Item 7.8, Assessment and Tax Service Fees Adjustment. Item 7.9, Bylaw 20601, Closure of Vehicular Access to Titled Parcels for 86th Street and 95th Avenue Renewal Projects. And item 7.10, Bylaw 20710, Bylaw to designate the Coates residence as a municipal historic resource, Amendment Number 1.
Thank you so much. Vote, we done. Request to speak. There are few speakers that we have on item 7.4, even though 7.2, 7.3 are cross-referenced. Councillor Hamilton, you want to read those names?
Yep, my apologies. I have a bit of laryngitis. I'll move that Executive Committee hear from the following speakers in panels where appropriate on item 7.2, residential development property tax options. On item 7.3, 2024 community revitalization levy update, and 7.4, residential incentive program options. First speaker, Alex Hertzu of the Downtown Recovery Coalition. Second speaker, Kaylin Anderson. Fourth speaker, Heather Thompson from the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce. Fifth speaker, Jarrett Campbell. Sixth speaker, Panita McBrien. Seventh speaker, Anand Pai from NAOP Edmonton. Sorry, and Panita McBrien is representing the Edmonton Downtown Business Association.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Please vote.
Yes, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Request for specific time on agenda, none. Councillor inquiries? I see none. Unfinished business, none. Now we go into public reports, and our first item on the agenda is Fort Edmonton Management Company loan request. This is exempted by Councillor Wright. Councillor Wright, do you need a presentation?
Not necessarily. I do just have a few clarifying questions of admin.
Okay, just they're walking down.
Okay.
Once they are seated, I'll come to you.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning. We just have just a few introductory remarks letting you know who's on the delegation to answer these questions. I'm Jennifer Flaman, Deputy City Manager for Community Services. I'm accompanied today by Roger Jevney, Branch Manager, Community Recreation and Culture. Online, we have Darren Dalgleish, CEO, Fort Edmonton Management Company, and Jennifer Forsyth, VP, Finance Administration for FEMCO. We are here today to discuss the recommendation in which FEMCO has requested a $1.5 million loan from the City of Edmonton. The loan is intended to offset funding that FEMCO was required to pay back to the Canada Revenue Agency for Canada Emergency Wage subsidies received in 2020, 2021, and 2022 due to unforeseen ineligibility. If approved, administration will bring forward a bylaw for first reading at the April 3rd, 2024 council meeting. Following the passing of that bylaw, this report will return to council May 14th for final approval. Thank you, and we're pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. Councillor Wright, go ahead, please.
Well, thank you very much. I didn't sign up to ask questions here. But so, Ms. Flaman, I'm just wondering, so the funding was, it was to fund heritage operations, or that's what the city is responsible for, I think. So how much how much of these wages that were paid were for these operations? Or was it for other?
We can get the
Other
FEMCO staff to
services.
clarify, but this funding went to their operations through the entire year. For portions of it, the park was shut down due to COVID, of course. So the city didn't have any staff working there, or many staff working in the park. So the loan from the grant that had to be repaid from the federal government was for FEMCO staff only that were working in the park.
So FEMCO staff, not our operations staff?
That's correct. The city continued to fund FEMCO through the pandemic and through the construction project. So they had their kind of core staff, skeleton staff remaining through the pandemic that this grant was to help fund.
Okay.
And really, at the end of the day, there is a budget to run for the park. Some of it comes from the city and some of it comes from revenues that FEMCO earns through its programming.
Okay, and that was my other question, is what are the other sources of revenue? And of course, no programming went on, so there was no revenue during that time period.
That's right. No programming, no rentals, no admissions. The park was largely shut down.
Okay, and it's only this request that will be coming forward during the spring SOBA?
From FEMCO, yes.
Yeah, okay.
There's a release for it at the park, yes.
Okay, and then the loan agreement isn't private, correct? I just want to confirm before I ask some questions.
I believe the terms are in public.
Yeah, okay. That's what, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, so I'm just wondering in regards to the loan agreement with the interest rate. So the interest rate is determined on the date the draws are made, is that correct?
That's correct. We won't actually borrow the money until about 2026. FEMCO will pay off its current loan, and then we'll take out the money for the second loan, and the interest rates will be at whatever they are at that time.
Oh, okay. I was thinking if it was, but it says in here, all draws must be made by December 31st, 2024.
That's correct, Councillor. Just to add on to what Roger was saying there, they can start drawing on the loan. The payments won't be required back until January 2026 after the first loan is paid off.
Okay, so with interest rates possibly falling throughout the year, we might be in a better position as far as interest goes?
That's correct. So I think right now the interest rate's around 5% on a 10-year borrowing. So at the time of the draw, we'll see what the interest rate is then, and then we'll amend the loan agreement to reflect the most current interest rate.
Okay, so but we're not at risk of what the rates, what happens to the rates in 25 or 26, right?
That's right. So this will be just directly recoverable from EPCOR. So whatever the rate is, from FEMCO. So whatever the rate is, we'll.
I was wondering what EPCOR had to do with this.
Sorry.
And I think that's all the questions that I had. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Jans.
I guess I'm really struggling to understand the city's responsibility here. Like FEMCO's an independent organization. They have an independent board of directors. Like the city is obviously connected to the fort by, or to FEMCO rather, but I've got arts organizations who are really, really struggling right now. I've got other nonprofits who also had to pay back these loans. I'm just wondering, like, we were aware of the timelines for over a year at least, maybe longer, and why other decisions weren't made, like an adjustment to parks admissions rates or something else. Like we've had to tinker with a lot of other rates and admissions in all sorts of other aspects of the city. So I'm just really wondering why this is at the exec committee table.
It's because the city is the sole shareholder of FEMCO. They did have a couple of options, like other wholly owned companies. They could have came and asked for an increase to their budget. They chose to ask for a loan to get them through this time and to take advantage of some other grants that they've received. They are bringing forward a report with the SOBA, pardon me, Councillor Wright, but that will be related to a fee increase. So they have looked at their programming. They are looking at the revenue streams, including fees that will come to council for approval.
So how many years did this problem, like how many years has this problem gone on? Like has the loan and then the payback issue gone on for 3 years or 2 years?
I believe the current loan
like the FEMCO shareholder knew the loan was going to come due at some point, right?
So there's two loans, Councillor. One was related to the closure for the construction project and lost revenues. Then this flowed into COVID. This one's directly related to the grant that FEMCO received from the federal government. It's a similar grant that Telesol of Science received, Heritage Park in Calgary, other attractions. The federal government determined that because they're solely owned subsidiary of the city, that they weren't eligible for the grant and had to repay that. So they had built their budget.
So if
they
the
had done their
shareholder,
staffing
if the shareholder,
reductions.
sorry, if I may, if the shareholder knew that, like, it seems like they wanted the federal government to pay it back, but the federal government did, they wouldn't have been eligible. So, like, I'm just wondering, kind of like the same conversation we had with Explore Edmonton, who at what level and where was responsible in making the decisions that brought us to this point today.
So FEMCO applied for the loan in good faith. They believed they were eligible. They received it over a period of 3 years during COVID. After the fact, they were determined that they were ineligible. So in good faith, they paid back the grant to the federal government. At that time, they came forward to the city saying they're going to experience some cash flow problems. As a result, they're having to repay the grant. And that's why we're here today. The CEO and the CFO for FEMCO are online as well if you have specific questions for FEMCO.
And I'm wondering what other measures were taken over the last 12 months to generate revenue to offset this issue.
Maybe ask Darren Deglish, the president, CEO of FEMCO, to answer that one.
Good morning, Councillor Jans. There were a number of mitigating efforts over the course of 2023. Unfortunately, one of our biggest challenges was we lost 15% of our operating capacity due to wildfire smoke. As you know, we follow the city's policies on those conditions and when staff are permitted to work. So a lot of our initiatives, although we came very close to our expected budget, we weren't able to quite grow as fast as we wanted to this year. We did add a whole series of new programming, however. Last year, where the dark things dwell, we expanded dark, we expanded paranormal activities. Our sales team sold at about 80% capacity utilization for venue rentals and private events. We were able to offset a dramatic amount of the reduction in revenue due to the museum operations not opening from wildfire smoke. As you know, we're highly seasonal and our strategy focuses on creating revenue streams outside of the summer months. But with this type of industry, you see peaks and valleys in cash flow. You're spending dollars without revenue coming in and then vice versa. So our cash is really, really important for continuity. The ongoing cost escalation of the park, that we believe should be addressed in a price adjustment, as you were just suggesting earlier, and that will come forward to council later on in the spring.
I commend you on the steps you've taken. That's amazing. And again, every time I go to the park, I'm so impressed with the experience. So phenomenal work here. Thank you. Back to the chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jans. Councillor Salvador.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that answered a few of my questions, but just to be clear, I mean, if this were to not move forward today, given that we are the sole shareholder, I guess what would the implications be if it wasn't recommended up to council? Mike.
Oh, Darren, do you want to perhaps speak first to the impacts on FEMCO?
Yeah, for sure. Well, this would, there's two major impacts. One, we would have to prepare for the park opening with fewer resources and quite possibly.
Darren, can you speak up if you don't mind? Move close to the mic, please.
Yeah. There's two major impacts. One would be the degree to which we can prepare for park opening and staff it. So there would be fewer interpretive resources in the park, and that unfortunately has the opposite effect of what we're trying to create. The other thing is that we have a matching grant, a grant from Travel Alberta for development of expanded programming at the park, and we simply can't match that. We would have to return that money very shortly. So those are the two immediate impacts, and it would certainly curtail any new initiative launches.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you so much for that. And just on the piece related to the Travel Alberta grant, what's like how much are you leveraging right now from city investment?
The grant is for $500,000 and if it's matched. And so our intent would be to take that matching amount from this loan. And that would allow us to get started on our shoulder season programming that's so critical to our ongoing sustainability.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And then just on administration side, anything to add around implications given that we are the sole shareholder?
No, I think that, the FEMCO's business plan is looking at adding new products through the wintertime, expanding through the summer. So this does give them the opportunity to enter in those revenues rather than having them come in with reduced programming and reduced options to really generate the revenues they need to run the park.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Salvador. Just a few questions. So the program that federal government created, this is to FEMCO. You felt like many other organizations who are in a similar situation that FEMCO is, you applied in good faith with understanding that you're eligible for this grant funding to subsidize wages.
Yes, that's correct, Your Worship. We had, really the issue was not eligibility, it was the Canada Revenue Agency regulations.
Yeah.
When we determined we were ineligible, we paid it back immediately. And in fact, I'm pleased to say CRA waived the $200,000 interest penalty because we did that. My understanding is colleagues in the industry who have not done that yet have not received that relief. So I think we took the right approach here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are other organizations that were in a similar situation, and Explore Edmonton comes to mind here, but there has been stories throughout the country where organizations that were not eligible had to pay back the grant.
That's our understanding as well.
Okay.
We've met with Minister Boisano. He's also supporting many other organizations in Canada that have the same issue. It's pretty clear that the only option, and although we have made a formal request for reconsideration, it's very clear that the CRA is not going to waiver on this.
Yeah, and the CRA also is a arm's length organization from Government of Canada, so there's very little influence that ministers have on that, right? So that's another thing, because talking to Minister Bosno and other ministers on the issue, that's the challenge. But federal government has been pretty generous to FEMCO in many other ways, including $49 million grant funding for Indigenous Peoples Experience Exhibition.
That small grant, I forgot about that one. Yeah, in fact, that supported the development of the Indigenous Peoples Experience and quite literally put us back on the map in 2021. We believe we have good, strong partnerships with all three arms of government.
Yeah, good. And you're confident that the way this loan is structured, that you'll be able to pay it back over the next 10 years?
Yes, sir. We're very confident.
Okay, and to administration, like you have high level of confidence, right? That the risk is low on this loan.
Yeah, we agree, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, good. I think that is very important to understand, and if because FEMCO is such a phenomenal organization and park is such a phenomenal attraction in the city, and we need to figure out a way to support them out of this difficult situation, and we can do that without much risk. So thank you so much. I really just want to understand that. Okay, Councillor Wright, you have additional questions?
Just one more in response to a comment made by Mr. Jevney.
Okay. Go ahead.
In which he apologized, I think. As far as what's coming to Spring Soba, is there additional requests for funding, or is the matching funds required for the Travel Alberta grant? The report does say it's through this loan.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor, there's not an additional funding ask. We will be bringing forward their request to increase emission fees that need to be approved by council. And then, certainly the emission fees will help them achieve their financial objectives. And without that, there may be some additional risk. But those will be the two pieces, the final approval of this piece and then the fee increases.
Okay, wonderful. Okay. Thank you very much. I would like to move the recommendations that Executive Committee recommend to City Council that the terms of the loan agreement between the City of Edmonton and Fort Edmonton Management Company for an amount not to exceed 1.5 million, as outlined in Attachment 1 of the March 20th, 2024 Community Services Report, CS 02368, be approved, and that the agreement be in a form and content acceptable to the City Manager, and that the 1.5 million be appropriated from the Financial Stabilization Reserve in the event of a default of the loan.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. So we have motion on the floor. Anyone to speak to the motion? I see none. Right, Councillor Wright, do you want to close?
Excuse me, Mayor Sohi, if I can just draw your attention, we have made a slight adjustment compared to the recommendation in the report, and this will come to the May 14th City Council, so it won't come to your next regular council meeting.
May 14th?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I did not know that. Maybe I have to, before we vote, can I ask questions on the, does that in any way impact FAMCO being delayed by a couple of weeks?
Because I think they're aware of our timelines and that we still have to get the boring bylaw in place. Sorry, Darren, it sounded like you want to add anything?
You're muted, Darren. Does a delay of a couple of weeks impact you?
There's no risk to our cash position to do a couple of weeks. No.
Good. Okay, thank you. All right. Now, Councillor Wright to close.
Thank you very much, Mayor Sohi. I do think that Fort Edmonton is such a wonderful attraction to our city, not only for Edmontonians, but for visitors that come and support them to help them out of this financial situation. It is unfortunate. I think people were all in a scramble at the time of the pandemic to try to take on or to access some of the funding that was available. And I think the plans that they've made and have been undertaking to try to increase revenues has been quite positive. So I do support going ahead and with this loan. And I do appreciate that it's a loan and not a grant of 1.5 million.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. So please vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. It is carried. Now we go to our next items, 7.27374, Downtown Residential Development Property Tax Options, 2024 Community Revitalization Levy Update, Downtown The Quarters, Downtown and Belvedere, and the Residential Incentive Program Options. And we'll go to administration for a presentation, then we'll go to speakers.
On the city's community revitalization levy areas. The second and third report respond to motions related to residential incentive programs for downtown. Joining me presenting today is Alyssa LaLiberty, Branch Manager, Economic Investment Services, and Brett Latchford, Director, Strategy and Emerging and Economy, and others from administration to support any questions are here as well. Next slide, please. The success of downtown is critical to the success of Edmonton. A city's downtown is often the first impression made on visitors and is key to attracting and retaining new talent and capital. Edmonton's downtown continues to generate 9% of the city's property tax from less than 1% of its area. And administration is aware of the importance of maintaining current property assessment values. Downtown is a major node in the city plan, and it's the place where commerce, diversity, and creativity flourish. Since 2015, the city has made investments that have triggered $1.4 billion in capital spending in Edmonton's downtown to incent and catalyze development, including development of the ICE District, Alex Dakota Park, rehabilitation of Centennial Plaza, development of Warehouse Park, the Downtown District Energy, and upgrades to servicing and other projects. We recognize there is more work needed to continue to revitalize downtown and an opportunity to set new priorities. The city currently has financial challenges. However, I want to reiterate that downtown is important and a key priority for the department this year. We are committed to continued collaboration with community and industry to prioritize actions that have the most impact in our downtown in a holistic manner. This could include discussions with the province to extend the CRL and consideration of new catalyst projects, as well as a policy or program for a residential development incentive grant.
Next slide, please. These investments downtown, as well as others in different areas of our city, have been supported by our Community Revitalization Levies, or CRLs. A CRL is a planning and financial tool that helps municipalities like Edmonton revitalize areas where redevelopment might not otherwise take place. CRLs allow Edmonton to borrow against future property tax revenues to help pay for infrastructure development required in a specific area. There are 3 CRLs within the City of Edmonton: the Capital City Downtown, the Quarters, and the Belvedere. Each has a slightly different magnitude and time span, but all are in effect until the early 2030s. Given the downtown focus of today's cross-reference motions, let's take a closer look at the financial update for the Capital City Downtown CRL. Next slide, please. We know that CRLs are important long-term levers in developing integrated, vibrant, and attractive urban spaces that encourage more private investment. While investment in our downtown is ongoing, several changes over the past year have resulted in administration lowering the revenue projections for the Capital City Downtown CRL. Additionally, projections that were made pre-pandemic have been revised now that we have data from a new normal post-pandemic year. The current medium scenario projection for the downtown CRL is $679 million, a decrease of $103 million from only a year ago. This puts the 2034 projection for the CRL at a $76 million deficit. This means any further spending in the CRL will result in a greater deficit in the short term, even if the project positively contributes to the CRL by the end of the CRL. Any remaining deficit in a CRL at the end of its life must be paid back from general revenues. Next slide, please. The remainder of the presentation will outline the key points from and context for reports UPE 02198 and 02298, which each respond to one of Executive Committee's motions from October 31st. Next slide, please. Our downtown community is deeply diverse, and ensuring a range of housing options is important. Demand for housing in Edmonton is expected to remain strong as we are seeing record numbers of immigrants and in-migrants joining our city. Post-secondary institutes in our downtown, such as MacEwan University and Northwest College, are currently bringing over 30,000 students to our downtown, and with plans for expansion in the near term, we anticipate increased demand for student housing in our downtown core. Based on the most recent census data from 2021, there are 8,898 residences downtown, with 99% of these residents being 1- and 2-bedroom units. The average rent downtown is $1,600 per month. This is great for affordability, but a challenge for builders. In October, some builders were estimating that they needed up to $2,200 per month for rent for building new residential downtown in order for it to be economically feasible without an incentive.
Next slide, please. Administration reached out again to many of the stakeholders we spoke to for the recent downtown. Costs have increased significantly, while revenues in the forms of market rents have not increased as much. This graph shows the changes since 2018 in high-rise construction costs, represented by the blue line, compared to average downtown rents, represented in red. We also heard from stakeholders that perceptions of downtown vibrancy, safety, and security continue to present serious challenges. Despite these challenges, there are currently 1,138 units under construction downtown. However, there are few development applications for downtown in the pipeline. Of note, all the current units currently under construction were incentivized by the 2021 construction grant. Next slide, please. Looking at projections, CMHC forecasts that vacancy rates across the Edmonton CMA, or Census Metropolitan Area, will continue to decrease over the next 2 years, and average rents for 2-bedroom units across the Edmonton region are projected to increase 15% over the next 2 years. Next slide, please. As we started to address this issue, we looked to the City of Calgary, who recently implemented an office tower conversion incentive project. As a reminder, in 2021, Calgary's downtown was in dire circumstances. They found themselves with a comparatively huge surplus of office space built by the market as a result of a boom. And when the boom ended, the Calgary market had a 34% vacancy rate and 14 million square feet of empty offices. The business case for Calgary was less about return on investment and more about the acknowledgement that their downtown was failing due to too much vacant office space. This was a way to leverage private capital to help tackle the goal of removing 6 million square feet of office space. Calgary's program offers $75 per square foot for office to residential, $60 per square foot for hotels, and $50 per square foot for post-secondaries or performing arts space. They chose the office to residential number because it was, at the time, half of the $150 square foot per construction cost for office conversions. Ultimately, the City of Calgary's incentive program encourages conversion of office space into residential and other uses rather than incentivizing new residential buildings. The critical driver for Calgary's program was the surplus office space, not the need for more housing. Next slide, please. This slide presents the break-even points in simple scenarios where the city is paid back in property taxes for its incentive after a certain number of years. This analysis includes a few assumptions. Number one, this is for high-rise developments. Low-rise developments will take longer to reach a break-even point. Number two, the table assumes a 3% increase in property tax after completion and only the municipal portion is captured. In other words, this is a building outside the CRL area. Number three, these calculations assume that the development would never happen without an incentive. If that project would have happened without an incentive elsewhere in the city or in just a few years' time, the grant wouldn't truly break even at all. Next slide, please. Although the report recommends how a CRL-funded grant could be structured, administration does not recommend funding an incentive grant using the downtown CRL. The reasons for this include the limited financial capacity of the CRL, cash flow implications of grant payments versus debt-funded capital projects, the limited boundary, the necessity to delay other catalyst projects, and legal considerations. If a program were to be implemented from any funding source, administration would recommend the following. Next slide, please. We heard repeatedly from stakeholders that a lump sum paid at occupancy grant was preferred. They indicated the dollar per square foot amount needed to proceed with the development varied. As each development project would need different levels of incentive, there are likely more potential projects out there than available funding. Administration recommends that no matter the source of funding, the program be competitive. Applications with the most competitive per square foot requirement would be more highly weighted during the grant evaluation. In this way, funds go to projects that are closest to market viability, and downtown gets the greatest number of residential spaces for the fewest dollars from the city. Administration suggests that the program offer a maximum of $40 per square foot. Stakeholders indicated a broad range of figures for what the incentive should be, from $0 to $100, with many suggesting $75. Although the $40 per square foot is lower than the figure we heard most often from industry, it is roughly equivalent in value to a 10 to 15-year tax freeze, which we also heard may be sufficient. While the report describes this program as CRL funded, there's nothing about it that's specific to the CRL. It could be funded from any funding source, including support from other levels of government. Next slide, please. The potential incentive programs presented today and in the reports are primarily about city building. They are about directing residential investment into the downtown core. This type of city building supports the city plan's vision for the city center node and helps grow the downtown residential population, which is a critical element of building a vibrant downtown. An incentive grant would be a meaningful boost to downtown development and would have a tangible impact on downtown activity. It would keep the momentum going in terms of residential investment. While any increase in the supply of housing is welcomed, based on the motions, administration has understood that these programs are not intended to provide affordable housing. There are other city programs designed to incentivize affordable housing. They are not targeted at any particular population or type of housing. The incentive programs will let the market determine what sorts of units to deliver. And finally, these would not specifically target office conversions, although conversion projects would be eligible to apply. Next slide, please. Finally, when considering a program, we'd like to share some of the risks that these programs could have. Firstly, rent is rising and is projected to rise further in the future. If this trend continues, incentives may not be necessary in a few years, particularly if interest rates also moderate. Secondly, these could divert investment from other city center areas. Thirdly, Council recently declared a housing and houselessness emergency, and although these incentives are about housing, they are not targeted at affordable housing. Finally, if these programs are funded using the CRL funding, delaying or canceling significant catalyst projects could also impact the long-term downtown vibrancy. Next slide, please. During our engagement process, we heard many suggestions that the city should look to extend the downtown CRL. The next few slides will review some of the key considerations for any extension of a CRL. Slide, please. CRL catalyst projects are intended to provide an uplift to property assessments and therefore property tax receipts in the CRL area. Catalyst projects must be approved by the Government of Alberta to be eligible for CRL funding. For example, Windspear is not currently approved as a CRL project. Amendments to the list of approved projects are possible, but they do require provincial consent. New CRL rules were adopted in 2022, which include a total assessment cap of 3% of a municipality's total assessed properties being inside a CRL. At last calculation, Edmonton's 3 CRLs together represented 3.4% of the total taxable assessment, meaning that the province is unlikely to approve new CRLs in Edmonton until one or more of the current CRLs expire. Additionally, under the new rules, only municipally owned assets are eligible for funding. And while Windspear is not considered municipally owned, this could be explored further with the province. All of Edmonton's existing CRLs and the Catalyst projects were in place before the 2022 rule changes. Next slide, please. Extending a CRL comes with several benefits. The primary benefit is the increase in revenue over the lifespan of the CRL. This can be quite significant as the base year would remain 2014, meaning any property tax that is earned from an increase in assessment would go into the CRL. The city will also continue to capture the provincial property tax portion of payments for use inside the CRL zone. Finally, the city can add new projects to the CRL plan when applying for the extension, creating potential for new catalyst projects to increase tax uplift and development in our downtown. The limitations, however, include the delay of CRL revenues returning to the general revenues of the city, meaning the difference must be made up by the rest of the tax base. Extending a CRL doesn't provide any additional dollars today. It provides only for additional dollars in the future life of the CRL. In order to fund immediate or near-term projects, financing may still be necessary. Currently, non-municipally owned assets, like the Residential Incentive Program, cannot be paid for with debt. If an extension is granted under the new regulations, CRL funds can only be used for municipally owned assets. The next slide takes a closer look at the financial impacts to a CRL. Slide, please. When thinking about CRL finances, we often pay the most attention to the bottom line over 20 years. Does the CRL generate enough revenue to cover expenses over its 20-year life? But the cash flow on an annual basis and the resulting impact on reserves is also important. Most CRL projects are debt funded, so the cost is spread out over a number of years. A grant program, however, would be an operating expense, whose entire cost would hit our books in the year it is paid. As the CRL is projected to run an annual deficit for the next few years, those expenses would go directly to the CRL reserve, resulting in a significantly deeper deficit. The chart on the screen illustrates a scenario where capital funding for green and walkable projects on 105 Ave, 107 Street, and 103A are canceled, reducing overall borrowing costs by $34 million. The positive change to the CRL cash flow that results is shown in blue. The red column represents $33.6 million in grant payments paid out between 2026 and 2028. These large expenses are booked in those years. The revenue that results from incentivized projects is estimated in yellow. This is positive for the CRL cash flow in future years. The green line shows the anticipated change in the reserve deficit relative to what is currently forecast in our medium scenario. By the end of the CRL, this scenario would result in an improved reserve balance, but in the interim, the reserve balance would be approximately $18 million worse than current projections, reaching a negative $92 million by 2028. Any extension of the CRL would not alleviate the short and medium-term pressures shown on this slide. It would, however, allow for more room for new projects in later or newly added years. Slide, please. This concludes our presentation. Thank you, and we'll be pleased to answer questions after the speakers.
Well, thank you so much for your presentation. I will go through the speaker list. And Alex Hershu, Downtown Recovery Coalition.
Yep, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Kaylin Anderson. You'll be speaker number 2. Kaylin, are you there?
Good morning.
Okay. Heather Thompson, Chamber of Commerce. Heather, you there?
Good morning.
You'll be number 3. Jared Campbell.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you. You'll be speaker number 4. Panita McBrien, DBA. Panita, you there? We'll call your name again through the list. And Anand Pai from AOP. Anand, you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, okay. Panita, you there? Okay. And Anand,
Sorry, difficulties.
We see you as well. Okay, so everyone is here. While you are all familiar with this process, each of you get 5 minutes to make your presentation. And after that, committee members and council members may have questions to you. So we'll go ahead, please. We'll start with Alex.
Thanks so much, Mayor, and it's a pleasure to be here this morning. So the Downtown Recovery Coalition is just profoundly concerned with the lack of substantive progress and inspiration evident in these recent reports concerning residential development and housing incentives. This is compounded by the urgency of the situation, particularly in light of the dynamic shifts occurring in urban landscapes nationwide. We know across North America, government leaders are confronting similar challenges as they grapple with the future of downtowns amidst changing office dynamics and evolving housing needs. And regrettably, Edmonton lags behind in embracing this transformative approach to downtown revitalization. Despite the clear imperative to act decisively, the recommendations put forth by the city administration fall short on addressing the magnitude of challenges we face. The reduction of recommended investment amounts and the absence of strategic engagement with the provincial and federal governments is a missed opportunity to leverage available resources and catalyze meaningful change. Administration's focus on affordable housing is also concerning as our population continues to grow with no strategy or plan in place to accelerate market housing. Simply put, these reports lack enough substance, data, feedback, and input to make an informed recommendation. You'll hear from our partner organizations this morning, and we also echo the requests and stand by their recommendations. We agree that these reports should be referred back to administration to provide solutions that align with industry feedback in terms of fiscal levers and appropriate levels of investment required to ignite change. And as always, we remain ready to collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, next we'll go to Kaylin Anderson.
Good morning, members of Executive Committee and City Council. My name is Kaylin Anderson, and I'm the CEO of the Urban Development Institute for the Edmonton Metro Region. I'm pleased to be here this morning to address the reports before you today on downtown financial incentives for new residential development and office conversions. Alongside many other speakers who took the time to address this issue at committee last fall, when myself and 3 local developers were here to present on behalf of UDI, specifically, we underscored the following. It's no secret that our downtown is currently struggling. In large part, this is due to increasing commercial vacancy rates, coupled by a lack of private sector financial viability to support new residential development. The last major development permit issued for downtown Edmonton was in 2021. This is a worrisome investment gap, particularly as our city as a whole is growing at a record pace. The concern that we highlighted then, and that we continue to underscore today, is that without taking concrete action, we will continue to see ongoing and significant devaluation in our commercial real estate market. This will erode tax revenues for the entire city. Steady tax revenues from a vibrant downtown core protects the city at large from massive shifts in tax rates. However, property values in the downtown core have been declining, with almost a quarter of office spaces sitting vacant. This continued devaluation in our assets downtown will erode the tax revenues for the whole city and will inevitably place increased pressure on the rest of the community to recover that burden. We suggested that incentives based on financial analysis conducted by our members, which include professional real estate developers, and in light of the per square foot incentive approved by the City of Calgary 3 years earlier, be pursued. So we were really heartened that committee heard and understood these concerns and sense of urgency in October, and that in response, they made a series of motions to explore property tax freezes and monetary grants in alignment with the annual CRL updates at this juncture. Since that discussion at committee in the fall, a few things have changed. Edmonton recently received $175 million in federal funding to accelerate housing construction in alignment with priority growth areas, and City Council declared a housing and homelessness emergency. Both outcomes reinforce the importance and capacity to address this problem head on. Unfortunately, the reports before us today find 3 ways to say no to these ideas and these opportunities. Further, they fail to quantify the impact of inaction, which, just as I've reiterated, is likely to result in even more downtown assessment decline as building tenancy renewals take place and commercial vacancies continue to grow over the years ahead. The new and existing tools that we have at hand have not been adequately explored. These do include the Housing Accelerator Fund, which is currently being leveraged for new residential development in downtown Calgary, extending the timeline of the CRL, which was also successfully achieved in Calgary in the Rivers District, and evaluating the uplift associated with new construction in our core relative to the downside of inaction and ongoing pressure on suburban areas to pick up the tab associated with declining revenues downtown. Growing the residential segment of our downtown community is critically important. In fact, the Capital City Downtown Plan, which was approved in 2011, lists downtown residential incentives as the top catalyst project for implementation. Not only has implementation failed to materialize in the intervening years, but current analysis seems to indicate that there is no appetite to do so in this way at this time. And we'd really encourage committee to give that a rethink. The idea to incent downtown residential development isn't new, and success has been proven in many other communities across North America, as well as within our own city in the past. Doubling down on our downtown is fundamentally game-changing policy. It offers a practical and timely solution to our housing crisis, rejuvenates our city center, and safeguards property values and property tax rate increases for the entire community. The downtown affects all of us, and we will all end up paying for this failure whether we want to or not. The $3 billion in asset erosion already realized since 2014 should spur us to action together. To wrap up, the lack of confidence, enthusiasm, and creativity to foster a business attraction magnet for our most important neighborhood is concerning and a missed opportunity. We recommend that these reports be referred back to administration to provide practical solutions that align with industry feedback in terms of fiscal levers and the appropriate level of investment required to ignite change. The real estate industry is extremely invested in the success of our downtown, and moving forward, we would be pleased to work with council and administration on this important initiative, including leveraging investments from other orders of government to prioritize funding for such a program. Thank you so much for your time, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much. Next, we'll go to Heather Thompson. Heather Thompson, go ahead, please.
Awesome. Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Awesome. So my name is Heather Thompson. I am the Vice President of Strategy, Research, and Engagement with the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce. And like many of us, I am speaking from Treaty 6 territory, traditional lands of First Nations and Métis people. I echo the comments from Kaylin and Alex from the Downtown Recovery Coalition who've spoken today. I would also like to further emphasize these points by highlighting some findings from a research study that I led during my time as the Executive Director at the Alberta School Business Centre for Cities and Communities at the University of Alberta. And this study, we published a study that was the 2023 Storefront Retail Report, which provided an examination of the street front retail landscape in downtown Edmonton and just overall downtown vibrancy. We revealed a detailed street front retail occupancy rate within the downtown business improvement area. And we presented a series of insights and key strategies that could foster future revitalization based on academic and applied research. The report commented on changing downtown environment in Edmonton over time. Like we heard in the presentation, much of Edmonton's downtown core was built between 1950 and 1990. Successful and vibrant downtowns were characterized by glamorous office buildings, restaurants, retailers, brick and mortar stores occupied such a large square footage in the downtown core, specifically in Edmonton, and people commuted into downtowns, and that's how we spend most of our time working and socializing, being active in these spaces. And as a result, residential development and overall residential properties receive less focus and less investment. Then we had the pandemic, coupled with shifts in technology and hybrid work programs and emerging social issues. This changed the way Edmontonians viewed and experienced the downtown. The research study revealed a key finding that residential development remains the most consistent and concrete solution to the revival of the downtown vibrancy and economic growth. The research also identified 6 strategies that can be used to revitalize downtown. And just to remind everyone what those look like, it was around bold beautification and investing in the downtown core, making sure that there was a place where shifting that conversation from return to work to return to live, and expanding the overall appeal of downtown from a workplace to around the clock destination for visitors and residents, and increasing residential capacity. So there's a variety of residences to have more people downtown to utilize these spaces. And there was very few findings of the study that underscores the importance of downtown revitalization and vibrancy for the overall region. And I want to be really clear that when we were looking at the data, this data demonstrated that increased residents in the downtown core will result in lower taxes for the rest of the city, increased safety and security, and overall economic health and vibrancy for the whole region. And so the most impactful investment to make to solve a variety of fiscal and social problems is around increasing residential capacity. So in conclusion, continued investment, collaboration with other orders of government, as well as innovative funding and incentive programs are essential to promote further residential developments, both in terms of new buildings and conversions to create prosperous and a vibrant downtown. And like others, I recommend that these reports be referred back to city administration to prepare solutions that align more strongly with industry feedback in terms of fiscal levers and the appropriate level of investment required to ignite change and revitalize our downtown. I also recommend that administration engage other orders of government to ensure a full range of creative and innovative options are explored for funding. Thank you, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Heather. I think this is your first presentation to council since you have taken that role, right?
Yes.
Well,
yeah.
Well done. Thank you so much for doing so.
Thank you.
Yeah. We'll go next, go to Jared Campbell.
Thank you, Mayor Sohi, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I echo a lot of the sentiments that Alex, Kaylin, and Heather mentioned. So I will try to not repeat them as much as I can for brevity. So, Edmonton is kind of booming from a housing perspective, and this isn't the first time this has happened. Since sort of my involvement in commercial real estate and downtown revitalization, we've seen this a couple of times. And each time we as a city hope to capture some of the excess growth or fast growth in residential population into our downtown. And we've seen it. Our downtown takes sort of a step forward. It did this in, the 2008, 9 or 7, 8 boom. It did again 12, 13. We saw a lot of after effects from that. And we're in that right now. We're seeing very strong migration. We're seeing a significant amount of home building, both multifamily and single family. In fact, it would not surprise me, and the numbers will still have to come out, that 2024 is likely to be the single largest expansion of suburban development in Edmonton's history. And so when I reflect on that and realize that it's also likely, barring action from council, that there won't be a single project breaking ground downtown, I think it really points to a disconnect in the type of city we want to build. And so, when we think about the actions that this council takes in many different realms, how does that allocation of housing away from the center of our city, which is currently happening, and way to the edge, affect not just this conversation, which is the vibrancy of our downtown, but everything else? Downtown is the center of our transit network, which has been a key area of investment for not just this council, but several past councils. It's the one of, if not the primary node of a ever increasing bike network. The residents that live downtown have far less dependency on cars, which is a affordability concern. It's also factors into our climate goals. And yet we're not seeing it. We're not seeing development happen downtown. And I think that this conversation around some of the costs that we're going to see with this inaction wasn't captured. When administration speaks to the break even of the grant, we simply talk about money coming in and when it gets paid back. I think what I said this in the fall as well, like what are the costs, right? So if a unit's going to go downtown and the person doesn't need a car and we've already got the infrastructure there, it helps meet our climate goals, help meet our economic goals. But like, what's the cost when it's not in downtown? What's the cost when it's at the edge of the city? Because that's what's happening right now. A couple other quick points. Administration mentioned that this was not directed towards affordable housing. I think I would encourage administration and council to familiarize themselves with the latest housing research, specifically the research done around moving chains, which concluded that all housing supported affordable housing, all housing built, even housing that was built at market through moving chains, supported increased availability of affordable housing. So I believe that if this grant were to encourage more housing downtown, it would support more affordable housing, not necessarily in those particular buildings, but through moving chains, and the academic research would support that. I sort of take the points that the CRL is not maybe the best solution, but I do think it's potentially the easiest solution, and I do think the province would be amenable to it, and I strongly encourage council to explore that. I also think we've got housing accelerator dollars, right? We've got $175 million. We're not sure exactly what we're going to do with it. I know there's a lot of ideas being thrown around, but we've also got to generate 5,000 units. Where are those units going to go, and how did those units support our larger city building goals? And if those units go downtown, we've also got a timeline. We've got a timeline to deliver those. And I know right now, downtown, there are thousands of shovel-ready projects that, with the support that would change the economics of their fundamental pro formas, they could move forward and help us achieve those goals. I believe we should be looking at using a small portion of the housing accelerator dollars to do that. Also pursuing the CRL. I think that there are other important catalyst projects like the Citadel Theatre that could come from that funding. And I echo the comments of everybody else that we should send this back, try to find some dollars, and appreciate the time, and happy to answer any questions anybody's got. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jared. Next, we'll go to Panita McBrien.
Hello, thank you so much, Mr. Mayor and members of the Executive Committee. My name is Panita. I'm the CEO of the Edmonton Downtown Business Association. One of the benefits of going very close to last in a panel is that most of my colleagues and partners before me have covered most of what I also wanted to share with all of you about these items. I think it's no surprise or secret to anyone that we're still in a really, really difficult place downtown when it comes to vibrancy and economic prosperity and all of those things that I know we all want for our downtown and our city. What I will add to what everyone else has already said is just a recognition that we, in partnership with the city and the city on its own in many initiatives, have been doing a lot over the last few years. It's not the magnitude of investment that I'm seeing in other cities. We're spending about $5 million a year on the Downtown Vibrancy Fund, while I'm seeing, other cities make announcements like Denver's city budget for 2024 is spending $58 million on their downtown. And I'm seeing those announcements all the time and recognizing that we're obviously in a very different fiscal position than a lot of cities, especially in the US, but that it is universally recognized how critical the future of a downtown is for the future of any city and any economy, any municipal economy. And because I know that we've been doing so much with things like the Downtown Vibrancy Fund, I just want to stress that nothing else we're doing right now will make the difference that getting thousands of new housing units would make. I think we've talked about this many times, whether we're talking about safety and security, whether we're talking about economic prosperity, business attraction, all those things, we just need people downtown for all of that. We need dramatically more people downtown every single day. We're not going to get that through office workers. We know that. And we can only have so many events and festivals in a year, and that's not the same as sustained everyday traffic that we need. And the only way to get there is with residential construction. And we do have now a much lower residential vacancy rate than we did during COVID. We know that we could fill up any new housing that gets built downtown, especially between our post-secondary institutions and all of the migration coming into Edmonton. And it is just not happening right now under current market conditions. And if we don't intervene, if we don't do anything, Jarrett Campbell said it very well right before me. Development is happening everywhere. Tens of thousands of units are being built all across the city, and there have been 0 housing starts downtown in the last 2 years. The grant that was done, the residential construction incentive in 2021, was the last time that anything got built, that any construction started. Because again, as all of my colleagues before me stated, the market conditions just don't make sense right now. So we're in a position where if we don't do anything to make sure that residential development happens, we are building a donut city. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for why we got to this place. And I recognize it's not ideal. And I know a lot of you are going to be struggling with how to make a program like this work, given the fiscal situation that the city is in. I just want to stress what the consequences would be of doing nothing. Like there may be some risk in taking some of these moves, like extending the CRL and finding ways to fund a program. But the risk of doing nothing is so much greater to our tax base, to our economy, to perceptions of our city, all of it. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for joining us, Peter. Next, we'll go to our last speaker, Anand Pai.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity to speak today. I hopefully won't take my whole 5 minutes. I think the speakers have done a good job to really summarize everything. My name is Anand Pai. I'm the CEO of NAP Edmonton, Edmonton's Commercial Real Estate Development Association. We're often strained, I think, to talk about some of the positive actions we can take to catalyze investment in downtown. I've felt this way for some time, that we lack a single project that we can point to after the arena and warehouse park, but the things that are already funded, that we can say this is one thing that we can do that will really try to achieve our goals. A developer told me last week, to imagine looking at the paper in Toronto and seeing Calgary's ambitious overall plan and incremental successes to achieve that plan, and to compare that with the conversations he's had with folks who are funding projects in the same place, with Edmonton, where he felt at least that we've conflated sometimes overall societal issues with downtown, and that one can't be solved in the time frame of a single development. And so I appreciated the presentation today, because I think that those presentations went further than the reports did in terms of research on the CRL and understanding some of the opportunities and some of the risks in not having any action. But it does feel to me like we're one report behind. So I was looking at my notes from when we were last year in 2023, in October 2023, and just wanted to reiterate a couple of those points. Our industry as a whole still feels that we need to be explicit in some overall goals and really clear on the measurements for some of our goals for downtown. I think a really catalyst project should be measured by whether or not it can do some of these things. Should one of our goals be to increase the downtown residential population by a further 10%? Action on this file would do that, but taking that aside, just is that a worthy goal? Increasing housing choice and affordability is the overall goal of our Housing Accelerator Fund. We know we'll miss that mark by 130,000 units in Alberta. That's their current projection, but we're working on it. So I think we have that goal. Increasing downtown's daily population beyond 2019 levels is kind of the overall theme, in my opinion, of the work that Ms. Thompson did last year, and the reports talking about saving downtown retail, really. Making investments in terms of servicing costs and spin-off economic impacts as a city as a whole is kind of what Jared Campbell's talking about in his presentation there. And stopping the decline in downtown assessments beyond the $3 billion that we've lost between 2014 and now. I think those are all laudable goals. And it is our opinion that investments in housing and in a downtown residential incentive is the most straightforward way to achieve those goals. It would represent a seismic shift in the way that people experience downtown, in the holes that we have in downtown development, and would be, in our opinion, the only thing that is left that is worthy of being called a catalyst project, which is why it is the final catalyst project in the CRL. And so I think we need to, I should say, in 2023, when we were speaking last, we talked about the need to agree on a plan, and I think these reports have that plan in place. And then we talked about needing to measure the budget for this plan against those goals. I think that this is a worthy investment, and I think that council needs to be more direct in those goals, in their asks of other levels of government, and in their asks of administration on the need to seize the opportunity to increase the downtown residential population. So thanks very much for the time, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us and sharing your thoughts with the committee and council members. Now we will go to committee members for questions to members of the public. Councillor Jans.
Thank you for this, and thank you for the speakers coming today. I just want to make sure I sort of understand everyone. So I've tried to summarize it here, and maybe as a general principle to Mr. Pai, you've spoke to us before about the importance of tax uplift and spending every dollar to get the maximal return, such as industrial land. Is that sort of a fair lens by which we should be viewing our decision making?
I think so. I think that this
like industrial
passes that test.
Yeah, like industrial land generates more. Every dollar we put in, we get way more money back than residential or business as a city. And I guess, Mr. Campbell, if I can get clarity, so I agree with you that we need more housing, absolutely. I guess if we could have the choice between more units in the quarters or in Waquentawin or in, say, Southgate, or fewer units downtown for the same price, which one should we be looking at?
I believe we can probably meet more of our goals as a city by having those units downtown, but there's certainly, it's not quite as simple as just saying one or the other. I mean, if the units in the quarters are half the cost of downtown, then we should be doing it there. And so I think it's important to take a holistic look on, okay, so what does it do for our overall cost of providing transportation to our citizens if more people live at the nexus of our transit system? And
so, but not everybody's working downtown. Like I think we agree with the principle of location efficiency. We want people to live close to where they work and have transit, but you can live at Southgate Mall. You can live and have, you can be in not even a 15-minute city, but a 5-minute city there. So I guess one thing I struggled with the presentation is many of the points were made, people would talk about downtown, but then speakers would talk about the core of our city, which could include the quarters, or it could include Waquentawin, or it could include 124th Street, or it could include White Avenue. And all of your points would still be true for White Avenue as they would be 104th Street. And then also, like the speakers seem to bounce in and out of like downtown, the core of our city, or city center, or center city. And so at the end of the day, I guess I'm wondering, is it like the specific 3 blocks between like 99 and 102, or is it between 124th Street and the Highlands? I don't know. Anand, if you want to jump in on, or sorry, Mr. Pai, if you want to jump in on that, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I don't think that you're seriously considering an incentive program for Southgate, and so I think that to answer your question, that these developments are developments that wouldn't happen without an incentive program. Whereas in Southgate, because our population will increase by 100,000 people between the start of 2023 and the end of 2024, those projects might be built anyways. And I think
with the Housing Accelerator Fund money, though, we need to maximize the numbers of doors we're providing. And we have 30,000 people who are making less than 45,000 a year. Who, I mean, any market housing downtown that would be inaccessible to them. So I'm just trying to figure out, where can we get the most doors per dollar?
I think there's a difference between whether the city builds it or the I think you're conflating the city built affordable housing with the incentive for market housing.
No, even if we use the Housing Accelerator funds as like a matching program or a grant or anything else, where will we generate the most doors? And is it okay if it's on 95th Street or in Chinatown? If we can get more doors, like if the goal here that we all share is housing, where can we get the most housing per dollar? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, Councillor, maybe I'll jump in. Probably the best bang for your buck would be in the suburbs if you wanted to generate the most units the fastest. I think what Anand did a really elegant job of saying is that through the political decision-making process, there's many reasons to ensure that we have a great downtown. So in balance, if simply wanting to generate the most housing the most quickly, I would suggest that we, pour all of our money into our suburban neighborhoods for
but
speed.
Then that would contradict Mr. Campbell's point about location efficiency, because now we'd be strapping them to 2-car ownership, 30 grand a year for cars. Okay.
Come for second round. We'll go to Councillor Wright next.
Thank you very much. I'm concerned. I mean, developers in Greenfield or even other infill areas aren't asking for or being provided these same types of incentives. And I do recognize the importance of the downtown core to our city. But Ms. McBrien, you had sort of summarized, knowing all this information that we've received today and that our speakers have presented to us. I'm just wondering why the business community isn't moving on this. I mean, rather than sitting on empty buildings and vacant lots, isn't generating revenue and turning a profit enough of an incentive for the development community to get moving themselves?
It's a great question, and that is, that is the situation we're in. They would not be making money and generating any kind of profit under current conditions. And in fact, the biggest barrier is that they can't even get banks to lend them the money right now. Lenders are extremely tight right now. Everyone's got a wary sort of eye on downtowns in general, and Edmonton's downtown has a huge red mark over it. What I'm hearing from a lot of banks and lenders as not being as being too risky a place to lend, and our rents are actually still quite low across the country, and capital is mobile. So if you're a downtown developer, I know some who have land in downtown Edmonton, and construction costs are essentially, they're pretty close here to what they are in, let's say, Calgary or Victoria. But the rents that they can get on that finished building are double or in some cases triple. So our rents are actually still quite low in Edmonton relative to other cities. That's their only revenue once the building is built. So if they're building their pro forma and looking at what will I actually generate in revenue off this building once it's done, the math simply doesn't work right now for downtown Edmonton. The land is too expensive, the property taxes are too high, and then building costs and everything else. If they're going to set market rates at market, which is, again, actually quite low on average compared to every other major city, it's not a viable business decision. And that's why we don't have anyone building anything downtown. If there were some who were building and others who weren't, this would be a totally different conversation. But there are highly invested developers who have land, have a development permit, know what they want to build, and simply can't make it work downtown. But meanwhile, they're building massive development out by the new Millwood station on Valley Line Southeast. So that's where the intervention is necessary, because we have a downtown that is dramatically underdeveloped relative to other major cities. And now that the world is in this, inflationary circumstance, they simply cannot build buildings that financially work without intervention.
Okay, you mentioned current market conditions, and I know interest rates have gone up, but what has kept them from developing in the past couple of years when interest rates were at the lowest that they've ever been? I mean, I worked in banking when interest rates were up at 20% and things were still being built. But I'm just wondering, why hasn't any of this development come about in recent years?
Yeah, since 2022 is the last time that a new building was started, March of 2022. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we don't have any builders on the call right now. I don't know, Anand or Kaylin, if you want to jump in on that.
Interest rates started to rise in about March of 2022. So that's when interest rates started to rise. So
I'm sorry, we missed your first part of your answer, Jared. What was your first part of your answer? Can you start again?
Sorry, Councillor Wright had asked about interest rates. Interest rates have been rising starting in early 2022. That's when we started to see the real spike in interest rates. And so that is just one factor that would go into a performance.
But what was happening before that? I mean, we've had vacant buildings and vacant land and surface parking lots for years here.
I have this conversation with developers often, and I think that the shortest version is developers say, like, we lose the sale between the car and the building. We are, the overall product needs a shot in the arm. I think that if you're the first developer to go, especially without an incentive, that developer will probably go bankrupt, and it's a bad signal to the rest. That's my personal opinion, and backed by some of the conversations we've had with the community.
Thank you,
I
Councillor Wright.
don't quite understand that analogy.
It's
but
okay, come back, Councillor Wright, for a second round. Councillor Salvador.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks to all of our speakers for being here today. So I just want to maybe direct this to Speaker Campbell. Apologies. So last April, as part of these conversations, there was a forecast from CMHC that vacancy rates were expected to fall to 10-year lows. Rents were set to rise 17 to 18%, and we saw that in administration's presentation and some of the graphs they provided this morning, that those pretty major shifts have materialized. And as you mentioned, we're seeing home building all over the city, but I'm still struggling as to why those same economics are not supporting home building in the core.
So it's the gap between the costs. So generally speaking, costs to deliver housing is more expensive in the core than it is in the suburbs. CMHC is a major factor. CMHC does not factor in transportation costs when assessing what is an affordable or not affordable housing unit. So it truly does favor the cheaper units in the suburbs, and rents are not able to make up that gap. So if you look at the rents across Edmonton, you're absolutely right, they're going up. The gap between what you can get for rent in the suburbs, what you can get for downtown, is not currently sufficient to make up for the higher cost and lack of available lending.
Okay, and I also want to ask then, does that discrepancy, or like part of that discrepancy, have to do with I guess development expectations around the scale of development we want to see in the core? Like I am concerned that, there's such a focus on towers in the core, and what if the economics don't support towers at this time? Like, we're seeing mid-rise across the city in communities directly adjacent to the downtown core. But what if the land is not valuable enough to support towers?
That's a really good question, Councillor Salvador. I had this conversation with a developer. I wish he was on right now, with Autograph Group. They were looking to maybe shift their plans to look at mid-rise development, and that, I don't know if they still are. But I think a lot of developers have looked at every possible scenario. I think that's part of the narrative here that I picked up on in previous questions, that like developers just don't want to, and you know, why aren't they building? Like I've heard a lot are trying to get really creative, and where land values are right now, it doesn't make any sense. And the problem is these developers all bought the land when it was really highly valued, and so you like it can't change hands, and construction can't start with all of these factors.
Maybe I'll echo that as well, Panita. Councillor Salvador, the development community doesn't have an ideological bias towards one type of housing over another or one location over another. They're very beholden to making their numbers work and getting the financing. I think another misconception is the idea that a developer is someone with $100 million ready to spend, and in fact, they're just an agent for borrowing. So the local developers have been running pro formas on different types of forms across all parts of the city, and they need to convince banks that that's the best return on investment, not just relative to Edmonton, but as Panita mentioned earlier, relative to the rest of the country, which is what we're in competition with.
Okay, thank you for that. That's helpful. I think some of the questions Councillor Wright was asking also prompted some questions in my mind, just reflecting on the conversation that we had yesterday about surface parking lots in the core. And I'm sure a number of you were, well, some of you were part of that conversation, others were watching, I'm sure, but you know that the direction committee gave was to look at temporary permits and having these landholders hold on to land for potentially 7 to 10 years at least. And like this, I'm just feeling some discrepancy here. If they're planning to hold for 7 to 10 years, like why are we not lowering expectations, I guess, around the scale of development? Or you're telling me that is happening?
Yeah, they're exploring all scales, Councillor. There's no holding out for a certain number of stories, or it's just about what will make the math work with getting the financing and the project built on a returns an investment that will allow them to do the next project.
Okay, I'll probably come back for another round. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Salvador. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. This has come up a few times already, and so I want to come back to the question around. I think Ms. McBrien and Ms. Anderson, you both mentioned that the lending environment, the development environment is bigger than Edmonton, and it's bigger than Alberta, and so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I can touch on it briefly. I'm definitely not a development expert, but from my conversations with developers who I know who have land here, development permit here, maybe now expired, but that had every intention of building in Edmonton, they just, their buildings in Calgary have gone, their buildings in Kelowna and Victoria have gone, because the rents that they're able to get, coupled with their lender partners' willingness to loan, and all these things just work in those other locations in a way that downtown Edmonton has not worked. And I don't know the details as to exactly why that is, but maybe Kaylin can jump in.
Maybe I would just add that developers need to provide an opportunity to their lenders that will return an expectation for return. And when we think about the fact that most of our Canadian pension funds are invested heavily in real estate across the country, the expectations of the shareholder are strong and they're quite fierce. So when we lose a deal for development in downtown Edmonton, it doesn't even mean that we get that deal picked up in suburban Edmonton. It might mean that we get that money moves to Kitchener-Waterloo. And I know this because a lot of the developers that are members of the Urban Development Institute have been wildly expanding their portfolios across the country. And I think that's to leverage different opportunities at different times. So right now, there seems to be some good opportunity in Calgary, which is great for Calgary and good for Alberta. but the stronger markets in BC and in Ontario are still pulling a lot of that capital that way. So, we're a bit scrappier here in some sense, insofar as we only have about a dozen homegrown development companies in our whole region, and their money is not their own, and they have to follow where they will get the lending, because the shareholder at the end of the day, keep in mind, isn't just the bank. It's all those pension funds, it's all those other investors that really floats the backbone of much of our economy overall. So it's less of an independent decision than one might actually think.
And it sounds like we're negotiating against ourselves to an extent. I wanted to ask either Mr. Campbell or Ms. Hertzu. The city administration is proposing, if you're to do some kind of incentive, it would be agnostic to either residential conversions or new construction. And I'm wondering if you could provide some input on if you think that should be limited, or sort of how you would think that might shake out in an incentivized balance of things.
I'm sure Jarrett can maybe expand on this a little bit more. I don't think that there's a lot of buildings in downtown Edmonton that are ripe for conversion right now, and so a combination approach would have to be taken to get the development to where we need to go. But I'll let Jarrett add.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a complicated conversation, but echoing Alex's comments, I think if the main goal is to support a vibrant downtown, that's going to come through having more residents living downtown. And so the opportunity needs to be kind of as broad as we can. There are a handful of office conversions that could provide more housing. There's also a lot of shovel-ready new developments that could provide that housing. And I think that taking a both approach is superior to trying to favor one or the other. It really should be who can deliver housing kind of the fastest and the cheapest, ultimately, but to the government, because it's really the residents living in downtown Edmonton that's going to drive the vibrancy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. I'll go next. I'll start with Speaker Nandapai. I'm going to challenge you a bit respectfully, and you said the next big thing hasn't happened in downtown since the arena. Looking at administration's report, about 9,000 people reside in downtown now. And with the construction incentive program, we will build or unlock building of 2,340 units. That's 10 projects. Even that is if it's 1 to 2 bedrooms, you're looking at close to 3,000 to 4,000 people moving downtown, and that's almost 40% increase in population. Isn't that one big thing that city has done for downtown?
No, that's a good point. I think I think so. That program, in my opinion, was such a huge success, and the numbers speak for themselves. Administration highlights them, and worked really, really well, and was a large increase. I think it's a factor in parks going and in Qualco's projects. So I think that you're right.
No, the reason I'm raising, because we're all in this together, and I think we ought to continue to acknowledge what is working and how we can build on that. I want to go to Speaker Kaylin Anderson, because I'm getting kind of mixed message from the industry, depending on what we are discussing. When we discuss substantial completions, we hear, no, we got to continue to grow in the suburban communities. That's very costly as well. And when the resources are limited for city to leverage growth or support growth, and at some point we need to make some decisions. If we only have certain amount of money available and we think the best value of that money is to spur growth in the downtown in mature neighborhoods, let's focus on downtown at this time. If we were to create a fund, that would mean less money for suburban infrastructure. So at some point, we need to start making some tough choices around where public dollars go to spur growth. But I'm not hearing that from the industry, that we need to have more focused approach. And that, what I hear is that it seems like everything for everyone, right? I want to get your
We have
thoughts.
to build, yeah, we have to build everywhere, Your Worship. It's going to happen. The downtown can't absorb, or infill can't at this time absorb 60 to 100,000 people coming in at once. And if we can't absorb it, it'll go into our region. When it comes to infrastructure investment, I think it's worth noting that the private sector provides all of the infrastructure investment that goes into starting up a new community.
I understand that, and Kellen, I understand that, but I'm talking about the supporting infrastructure that's required later on with fire halls, police stations, recreation centers, libraries.
I get it, Your Worship.
Right? So, and that needs money. So what I'm not talking about growth that doesn't require incentives. We are talking about our cost from public, right?
Right.
And suburban growth does require support from public to provide those services. Revenue generated is not enough to compensate for those services. I think that if we're all in this together, I think we need to have a conversation about making some tough decisions. If our focus is downtown, and we need public dollars to support that growth in downtown, and when we know we just limited resources, that's where I'm really struggling. Like I'm just trying to get to some consensus that this is where we need to focus if we need to focus downtown.
No, that's a fair question. And what I would say, Your Worship, is that population, like the things that you've noted in terms of fire stations, rec centers, police, et cetera, these are population driven. So as our city grows overall, the city will need to make those investments regardless. It just depends on where those happen and at what pace. I think what we're saying a little bit bluntly now is that you won't need to worry about making those investments downtown anytime soon unless we get some residential growth happening, but I can promise that the suburbs will continue to grow at pace.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. I'll go to Councillor Principe next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to follow up on the questions that Councillor Hamilton was asking. Ms. Herzog, we were discussing the commercial conversion, converting to residential, and it's my understanding that it is quite costly to do so. Is it, I'm not sure if you're the right person to ask, maybe someone else can answer. Is that the answer, or is it, what is the answer?
I think honestly what we're lacking from these reports is actually a clear recommendation from administration on what would work. And I think what we need to understand and what administration failed to do in these reports was outlining what is possible if we were to pursue any of these avenues. So we do know that there's only a handful of buildings that would be ripe for conversion, and what those builders might be able to do with a certain dollar amount is still yet to be determined, because we just don't have that actual program in place. And so I think what we actually need is a pathway forward on how we are going to define who would be able to apply for these types of incentives, and then ultimately who can build them for the best price. And I think what we're wrapping our head around right now is maybe what that dollar value is, instead of just actually asking administration for a clear recommendation on how to incentivize this, because there will be winners and losers. And maybe Kaylin or Anand can pop in on the on what is ripe for conversion and what isn't, and what we're seeking. But ultimately, we're looking to densify the core, and I don't think anyone on this call or speaking to any of these points would argue over conversion over greenfield. I think we're saying everything would work, and let's have a real conversation about what that looks like and get down into the brass tacks and finances of it, instead of living in this 100,000 foot view right now. And that's kind of where we are. I might just ask Kaylin or Anand to jump in on that number, though.
Yeah, sure. The one thing I might suggest about conversions that's an interesting benefit, which even though we only have a few buildings that might be ready right now, or in the pipeline, if the financing works, is that they not only create new residential units, but they take commercial offline, which means that the other buildings will fill up more and lowering our overall vacancy rate and taking away that burden in terms of the declining assessment value downtown. So both work. I agree with Alex entirely. On the conversion side, there might not be as many opportunities, but those that exist have that kind of like the double punch.
Right, and actually that follows into my next question. Is there, if there is the commercial conversion to residential, that decreases the available commercial property available, and would that not create a higher cost for commercial space? Will that discourage commercial development?
I think it would maintain some of the very, very low costs associated with office right now. But I think that the advantage, especially the advantage to the city, is that it would stem the bleeding of assessment. So if we sell some B and C class office spaces at 2/3 or half of the assessment that the city is currently making in terms of tax assessment, means that the next year they'll be paying more, much closer to their market rate, which would decrease the amount of taxes that they're paying. And so Kaylin's point is really that if we're able to increase the occupancy of the buildings that are left, that will help the city overall.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks for that. And then I know that the development industry is really good at knowing where people want to live and where, construction should be done. Do we know if there is more residential? Will people want to live downtown? Will we be able to fill people in the downtown residential area?
I can speak to that a little bit. That was definitely a concern in 2020, 2021 during the pandemic, but we're right back to pre-pandemic residential vacancy. In fact, I think actually probably lower downtown now, because buildings that I know were really struggling to find residents are now fully leased. So for example, even the Hat on Jasper Ave and 95th Street, it's really tough to track because so many of the units available downtown are condos. So it's not like centrally available data, but our vacancy rate for residential downtown is not that far off from the citywide vacancy rate, which is low and dropping rapidly.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think what we will do as a committee, recognizing there are very diverse views on this item, and there are other council members who are also interested in this item, I think it will be good that if we requisite this to council, and then from council we give some direction what the sense of is, right? I think it'll be helpful for industry as well to get a sense where this council wants to go with this. So we will conclude the questions to the presenters, and after that we will requisite this to council for further discussion. Is that reasonable? That also allows us to manage our agenda as well in the timelines. Okay. Is that kind of reasonable? Okay. All right, so we'll go to, next we'll go to Councillor Jans.
Requisition.
No, not yet. We'll conclude the questions at this time.
Well, in the interest of time, I'll hold my questions. But I want to thank the administration for the report, and thanks the speakers for the challenge.
Okay. Councillor Salvador? No, because presenters won't be able to come to council. So any questions to presenters? So if there are any questions to presenters, we can ask those questions now.
Yeah, so I'm just going to ask one question. I know Councillor Stevenson is not here, but just on her behalf. So maybe I can direct this to Speaker Anderson. If one of the economic conditions that would need to change is rents increasing, is there any way that a potential program or grant program helps prevent that from happening? So sort of a question from a housing affordability perspective.
So if, I'm sorry to get the question straight, if there is a grant program, would that impact rents down the line?
Well, I think the question is coming from a place of would a potential grant program prevent or reduce the need for rents to increase to make the economic conditions viable?
Thank you. No, it wouldn't. What the grant would do is create the ability for the project to develop. So that's the stage we're at. Rents are something that come down the line to a great extent. There wouldn't be. So what if there was a grant? It would mean that a shovel could go in the ground and a crane could go in the sky, like kind of through that first gate. It wouldn't impact the market rent, in the years and many decades to come necessarily.
I think I would just, I guess, counter that a bit and say that housing supply has been shown to slow rent increases and reduce overall.
Yeah, thank you.
So housing supply, if this is successful and we have, another 2,000 or 5,000 new units downtown, that absolutely would slow rent increases, which are already happening, and hopefully even reduce rents.
And if I could just offer another lens on this, just to highlight, is around the post-secondary residential need. And I think this one's a bit of a tricky one because the university doesn't have a lot of data as to how many students would actually choose to live downtown if there was more market value options for them. So I know a lot of students, based on my experience working at the university, would do a lot of commuting just because there was such limited vacancy in the area that it was just too expensive. And so when we're talking about more supply, yes, the rents will go down, and we'll also see a completely different sort of market that will take up some of those spaces. And when we look at the investments that are taking place with the post-secondaries in the downtown core, there's going to be more and more students that are going to be moving into the area and want to move into the area. So the demand and the supply will nicely complement each other, so ensuring that the rents will not skyrocket.
Thank you so much for those answers. Now I'm just going to jump back to one of my final questions here, and I might direct this to either Jarrett or Punita. I just keep coming back to the fact that we're seeing projects near like Stadium Yards, Mercury Block over in Wauquentoin, but like what is the dividing line between like those projects and projects that are slightly more central? Like I know, Speaker Campbell, you mentioned cost of construction, but is it really that different when we're talking about projects that are like basically on the border of downtown?
I mean, it's a complicated question, right? So, for example, the Stadium Yards buildings were built several years ago when it was pre-pandemic when they were started. There was just different economics and views of sort of, for example, safety and security. We do see a lot of activity, especially in West Oliver. There's, sort of stronger rent growth. There's more demand for retail space, different market conditions in West Oliver. And so, coming back to downtown, there's no real dividing line, but certainly as you start going west of 109th Street, you do start seeing more residential demand. You're seeing higher rents. And so that's where you're tending to see more activity. And I think big picture, though, we're not seeing very much activity in Central at all compared to where we're seeing there's a lot of what's Edmonton going to build this year? 12,000 units, 13,000 units, right? And how many are going to go into even downtown Oliver everywhere, right? Like a few hundred. So, downtown is definitely more complicated. There's certainly a more acute concern around safety and security, and that's driving a lack of rent growth that we've seen even, what would that be, 12 or 15 blocks to the west.
Okay. Punita, do you have anything to add to that question?
No, I was also going to add that, it does feel a bit nebulous because I struggle with that myself. Like, why is the same developer who, would build similar projects, why are they building over there and not over here? I do think so much of it is harder to track. It is things like safety and security perceptions, perceived lack of amenities like grocery and retail, and it's that chicken and egg problem that we're always trying to solve.
I'm out of time. Thanks.
Thank you, Constance Salvador Costa, right?
Thank you very much. I know one of the requests have been to send this these reports back to administration to work on further. And, I think they've done some good analysis. They've done, provided different scenarios, different break-even points for grants and whatnot. And so I'm just wondering, rather than them trying to have to read the minds of the business community and developers, I'm wondering if maybe the business community can put forward a proposal as to what would work for them, both for office conversions, which I'm hearing isn't a whole lot, but and present some sort of a proposal or business plan as to what they need. Is that something that's doable?
We can jump in a little bit on that. I think, Councillor, one of the problems with a program like this, and the reason that it needs to be driven out of administration, is there will be winners and losers. That is going to happen in a program like this. Calgary needed to define what the parameters would be for picking who would receive those grants. And so while we can come up with a recommendation, ultimately, administration will be tasked with choosing who is going to receive them. And so I think that's the tricky part here, with no clear program and no clear recommendation. While administration has done some work to outline what the pluses and minuses would be, they aren't recommending anything. And so I think that's where we're stuck a little bit. And I think maybe Anand, you were going to jump in, but that's mostly why I think it's important it comes from admin. We can take a stab at it, but ultimately it will fall to someone to choose winners and losers.
Yeah, ultimately it would, but at least they would have a starting point as to what the business community needs.
I guess I would just add that that an upfront grant that is based on a per square foot amount for that's agnostic between office conversions and new residential development and contained to the downtown is the consensus of the full business community. You see all of the groups here all agree on that, and I think that is largely what's contained in the attachment 2 of 7.2. Like that, I think we've told that to administration. They've heard us and understood it and written something there. And I think where they are pressed is just in terms of how do they fund it through the CRL or through taxes in 1 year or over a few years. And that's really more the question that's in front of council. But I don't think that they don't need to work any more on the how. The how we get there is established. It's just down to what are the benefits and how can we pay for it.
So I guess I would like to understand from the business community what, how much would that generate in units being rented? How much, what's your break even point? I guess.
I do believe that a couple of developers went as far as sitting down with administration and actually showing them their pro formas on projects. So I'm sure if you're talking to administration when this goes to council, you could ask them some of those questions. Like they did see it in black and white, what it looks like. And I think that's probably for some projects where that $40 number came from, that's what it would take to break even on some projects. That certainly won't make every residential project that's pending go. There's some that need more than that. But none, unfortunately, none of those developers are sitting here today directly.
But I think you can use the 2021 private construction grant to think about ways that you could measure the success of a program like this. So we know that added over 10% added more than 10% to the residential population of downtown, added 4,000 jobs, was matched, I think, 14-1 in terms of private investment to city investment.
I think it was 34-1.
34-1, great, much better. So I think that those are metrics. Like we can't imagine which metrics you want to measure, but I think there are very positive metrics, and so that's really the request of administration is just which metrics do you want to measure, and then that way we know what we're trying to hit.
Okay, and was that current or economic conditions at the time? Was that similar to what we're seeing now?
They're probably worse now, but this grant is higher than the 2021 grant.
Okay, all right, thank you. My time is up.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton?
I just had a quick question for Mr. Campbell. This is in your presentation. It's clear, I think, from administration's perspective that the CRL is not a preferred source of funding for any kind of residential incentive program, and it is not eligible. But you mentioned other sources, particularly the Housing Accelerator Fund, and I was wondering why you sort of identified that fund or that source of funding as a potential source.
My understanding is that the $175 million is sort of being processed through administration, identifying opportunities in a variety of different areas to accelerate more housing production. I believe that this conversation is aligned with the location of housing and the type of housing that we would want to encourage. It's also got the timeliness, right? The idea was to add housing in a fairly quick manner. We likely don't have any other area, or we don't have any other area of the city that would have as many shovel-ready projects that a quick movement from the Housing Accelerator Fund could, in very, very short order, drive shovels in the ground and housing units that help us meet the targets that the federal government gave to us to generate. So I think that source of funds would be an attractive place to accelerate these developments.
To your knowledge, have other municipalities or anyone on the call, have other municipalities used this source of funding to build similar projects or incentivize the development of similar projects?
Yes.
I believe Calgary has.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. All right, those are my questions. Thank you.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, my understanding of the way the funding is structured, that Calgary is able to build more housing because they were far behind in removing barriers to housing and removing all the zoning regulation requirements and everything else, so they can build more with less money. And Edmonton was, because we have been a leader in removing barriers, the things that Calgary can easily achieve, we have already achieved, right? So we would not be able to build as many units with the same amount of money because we now be going into more difficult areas. I think that'll be good information that we can gather from administration when we discuss this at council. I also understand that the targets for half funding, how many units can be built, is very ambitious, right? So we have to stretch every dollar. So I think there are some challenges around that, but we can absolutely ask those questions to administration. I want to get back to, so I want to make sure from my perspective, what will work to spur more residential or conversion is a grant program, right? A direct upfront grant funding. Is that what I am hearing is needed? Not other stuff we can explore, but they would not be as effective, or they don't make a big difference. Maybe I'll start with that, Panita, with Panita.
The short answer is yes, Your Worship. That's what we think is the most effective, because that's what will unlock the ability for the financing to work so the projects can start.
Is that your understanding as well, Panita? Like, we can explore expanding boundaries of CRL, we can explore other options, but the big thing that would need to be meaningful is that upfront significant grant investment per unit or whatever that criteria be.
Yeah, that's correct. We've heard, as we've discussed before, whether it's even the previous incentive was technically a property tax freeze.
Yeah.
But I believe it was actually city administration who felt that a grant was the most efficient and logical way to deliver that.
Okay, is that your understanding as well, then, Ann?
Yes, it is.
And Jared and Alex?
Yes, yep.
I think that clarity is important. Whether council can do it or not, that's a council decision. But I think we need to have that clarity from the industry. So thank you so much for providing that. That may also, again, I want to come back to my earlier question, that may come with trade-offs. That may come with the trade-offs in saying, if you're going to invest $40 million to spur more growth in downtown, there'll be that $40 million will not be available to add bus service in suburban communities or to add recreation centers or libraries in the new communities that will tie up future growth into suburban. I think those trade-offs needs to be considered. Maybe I want to get a sense from, I know where Kaylin stands on that. Maybe I'll go to Panita. Like, what do you think about those trade-offs?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously heavily biased, but I firmly believe that the most efficient way for the city to invest right now is in the core. And if you're forced to make those decisions, I think investing in downtown and the surrounding neighborhoods has a way higher payoff. It's more sustainable, both fiscally and environmentally. It uses our existing built-out transit infrastructure, which you know better than anyone, has a nexus of downtown. All the infrastructure we need to build a great community is already here downtown. We're already servicing it.
Yeah.
And it can sustain thousands and thousands of new residents in a way that new communities just can't.
Got it.
Without spending more money.
Just in my last 30 seconds, maybe to an end, as an industry representative, I'm not talking about industrial growth, I'm talking about more of a residential growth in managing that.
No, I think it hits, as Benita said, I think it hits multiple goals, and for that reason can catalyze investment from other orders of government, but also is just at the top of the priority list for sure.
Good. Okay. Thank you so much. With that, I'll go to Councillor Principe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to follow up with Ms. McBrien. I just wanted to get an understanding. You had said about the downtown being underdeveloped, and I just wanted to understand, do you mean just necessarily residential development, or is there any other type of development?
Underdeveloped in general. Like if you look at our downtown, it's a big geographic area. So way back when they were first planning and building it, we put office buildings as far away as 111th and 112th Street. And so it's quite spread out. And then we also demolished so much in between. So for a downtown of a major city, the amount of vacant land we have is just mind-boggling. Like we have not and didn't over all those decades develop all that land very consistently or close together. We've kind of got pockets all spread out and a lot of vacant land in between. So for what a major city's downtown should look like before we start developing everywhere else, our downtown is just not there. We've got, I call them missing teeth. We have so many missing teeth in our downtown. So it's not just residential, but right now we don't need more office space. We need more residential. And that's the best way to build our downtown to the future. So now it's actually an opportunity.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was my only other question. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Principe. Councillor Stevenson.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm just getting caught up and appreciate my colleagues for passing along some questions of mine to the speakers. And thank you all for being here this morning. Maybe just to build on that last point, and I apologize if it's been discussed, but just looking at the boundary of such a program, again, we would be constrained if we were using CRL as a funding source. If it was another funding source, are we still looking for that, quite targeted, certainly not beyond the downtown neighborhood boundary, but do we want to be even sort of a subset of that?
I think we've talked a bit about this. I think the downtown neighborhood boundary makes the most sense. I think it's where, again, we already have all this transit infrastructure and everything else built out to support a much, much denser community. And there are opportunities. I know that such a program would spark development sort of south of Jasper Ave over on 104th Street, over towards Norquest in that area, sort of like the government district, education district. And then as far east as the quarters, I think there's development opportunities all across downtown. And I think anywhere in that footprint would be a net positive for the city.
Okay, great. And when you say all the way to the quarters, to the boundary of the quarters or including the quarters?
My opinion is that more residents in the quarters would be good for downtown. I don't think it's as it wouldn't have the immediate impact on vibrancy and all those things we talk about in the core, but having all those residents nearby definitely makes a difference.
Okay, excellent, great. And maybe just a last point, because I understand Councillor Salvador asked earlier just about housing affordability being really top of mind as we're making these decisions, recognizing that rising rents isn't necessarily what we want to see, but it would make a lot of these projects viable. Just wondering again if someone could speak to recognizing that we do have our affordable housing investment program grant set up that offers quite generous capital investments. Just wondering if industry has looked at those in real depth to look at mixed market options that they could potentially leverage that granting stream. Mr. Campbell, did you want to jump in on that?
Sure. I have looked at that grant. It's tough to make it work. I think that you find most of the projects that move forward with that grant are doing it alongside other grants that are often not available to private developers. Whether there'd be an opportunity to take the AHIP grant along with, for example, a downtown incentive grant. It's already a struggle to make most of these projects work. If you were to take, for example, the $40 incentive, often what the AHIP grant is capping rents at is sort of vastly below where market rents would be at. And so when you combine that with higher construction costs downtown, you don't often see it. You don't often see it as a standalone, right? It's often having to be combined with other grant programs for it to make sense.
Yeah, well, and just to clarify too, like it's AHIP is 80% of market. My understanding is that MLI Select is it. I thought some of the requirements were around 80% as well, or at least 90%. So just again, I think what I've heard is that MLI provides that affordability, and
So the MLI, how MLI evaluates affordable rent is actually based on median renter income. So the MLI Select program considers any unit that is $1,665 or less to be affordable. AHIP caps it based on 80% of market rents. And so 80% of a market rent in Edmonton is considerably lower, especially when you're going to higher cost areas. And so the calculation is sort of using two sort of fundamentally different lenses with which to look at what's affordable.
I think that's a really important point, just as we think about MLI Select and what that accomplishes for our community, and sort of that unique aspect of our community, which is that our median incomes are quite high. So is that something you'd flag in terms of a challenge with the program, let's say, versus a city like Toronto, where they might have lower median income and therefore that affordability level is different?
Absolutely. MLI Select operates very fundamentally different in Edmonton than it does in other cities across the country, because nowhere else really has that level of median income compared to average rents. So what we would find, for example, is a suburban development project would find that many of their rents would be below the $1,665 threshold, regardless of what they did, because that's simply where market is. So we're getting a federal-backed government affordable housing program to build essentially what you would build anyways. That same housing project downtown would to account for the higher construction costs, higher build costs, all else being equal, would have units that go above that 1665 threshold, meaning that two projects, simply through the lens of the MLI Select project, it looks a lot better when you're out in the suburbs than it does downtown. So it's a bit of a unique situation with where Edmonton is in, but it is literally billions of dollars of capital that would shift from the suburbs to downtown or central. If, for example, the MLI Select program factored in transportation cost as what they consider to be an affordable housing unit.
Great. I've just got one last question, but happy to come around, Mayor Sohi.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Okay, I see no one else. Want to carry on?
Sure. So last question, just on that theme of not being as targeted as we can with the funds that we have. And again, apologies if this was covered, but just the tension or the focus on office conversion versus new build. Do we prioritize, I think office conversion, we sort of are accomplishing two things at once, which is helping to reduce vacant office space and provide additional residential. would that sort of be the first priority, recognizing that if that's not fully subscribed, the opportunity to incentivize new development would be there?
I would say that Edmonton is unique to other cities in many ways, as we've talked about, but we don't have. Calgary had this massive oversupply of office that we just don't have. We certainly have an oversupply, and I agree that would be a benefit, but eliminating some of our surface parking lots and vacant land is also a priority for us. So for me, like when I'm looking at this agnostically, like obviously not looking at any one development, removing vacant land and surface parking lots is every bit as valuable as removing empty office buildings.
Interesting. Maybe Mr. Pai, did you have any further thoughts on that?
Yeah, we pulled the membership, and I think it's a real positive thing. Over time, we've achieved this consensus that making a grant that's agnostic is a worthwhile endeavor. I think that the buildings that are owned by local owners with an incentive program will go in for office conversion, and they'll probably go first. So I don't think it's a risk in terms of having a program that's agnostic between new development and office conversion.
Okay, and recognizing that we may be again oversubscribed for that program, you wouldn't encourage prioritizing one over the other?
In a perfect world, I would make the grant available for whoever would like to use it at the time that they would like to use it for a certain period of time overall, and just allow it to be used until the total funding is run out.
Mm-hmm. And I just anticipate that we may run out of the funding before we run out of projects. But I think what I'm hearing is that it's first come, first served. Their industry isn't highlighting a strategic value of investing in one building type over the other. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. No further questions.
Thank you so much, Councillor Stevenson. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This concludes the questions to all of you. And we're going to requisite this item to council and carry on with discussion there. So would someone want to move requisition to council?
You just say requisition. Just say the word.
Okay, you need two people. Okay, want to requisite?
Requisition.
Okay, all right. And I agree, so please. Okay, it goes to council. Okay, goes to council for next further conversation. Okay, now we are on to Indigenous Housing Grant Program, right? That's the only item left. And I exempted it. I only exempted it to speak to this. I don't know if other council members have any questions on this to speak as well, right? So I will move, what I'll do, where is it? Here you go, 7.7. I will move the recommendation that a grant funding affordable housing agreement between the City of Edmonton and Métis Capital Housing Corporation for an amount not to exceed $2.29 million as outlined attachment 2 of March 20th, 2024 Community Services Report CS-0175 be approved, that the agreement be in form and content acceptable to the city manager. So we have a motion on the floor. Now I will open it for questions or anyone to speak to the motion. Okay, Councillor Salvador?
Yeah, thanks so much. So just briefly, wanted to express my excitement that this project is going to help us continue to deliver safe, affordable, and sustainable housing. In this case for Indigenous seniors, which we know is an incredibly important and underserved demographic when it comes to affordable housing. Not only does this help advance our goals related to affordable housing, but it helps advance our goals related to reconciliation as well. I can't wait to welcome new residents to Ward Métis, and I look forward to neighbors in the surrounding area enthusiastically welcoming these new community members as well. And also, just as a forward-looking piece, I'm looking forward to the second round of funding being released shortly so that we can continue making progress on this incredibly important work. So thanks to administration and of course all partners who are involved in helping deliver this project.
Thank you, Councillor Salvador. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you so much. Briefly, just wanted to echo my excitement and just real pleasure at seeing this project moving forward. I want to thank the applicants for putting this together. I know it's a lot of work, but we really appreciate the investment that you're making in our community and are very glad to partner with you on that. I think recognizing this was the first round, I really appreciate the reflection in the report of the commitment of city staff to work with some of the initial applicants to ensure that their next submissions can be successful ones. That commitment to help build that capacity is incredibly important. My personal experience of working with an Indigenous-led housing organization, Niganan Housing Ventures, they were able to partner with us at Right at Home Housing to build off some of our capacity for project development, and that's allowed them to be the incredibly, not allowed them to be, it supported them to be an incredibly successful organization that's been able to grow. And I'm really excited the city will be offering similar supports to help those very capable organizations who offer such important services to scale up the solutions that they have found and that we know work in our communities. So very, very excited to see that work moving ahead. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. I want to thank administration for recommending this partnership with the Métis Capital Housing Corporation, and this investment of $2.29 million will allow them to create or leverage this investment to create 36 near market, maximum 80% of average market rental, affordable rental units for low income Indigenous seniors. And I also understand that residents will have access to common room, social programs, and community activities. We all know that urban Indigenous Edmontonians are greater housing, core housing needs, and nearly 1 in 4 renters in Edmonton are in core housing need. But for Indigenous renter households, that number is 27%, while the senior renters, that number is 41%. There's a huge need for urban Indigenous rental options in our city, and this allows us to move forward on that. I'm also very proud of Council's support for Affordable Housing Investment Program, which will unlock 2,700 units by 2026. And this year, the Indigenous Affordable Housing Investment Grant was launched, and this was the first grant provided through this program. The new stream provides up to 40% funding, even though this was capped, I think, at 20%, right? That aligns to meet the needs of multi-bedroom units, and as well as build climate-resilient features and deeper subsidies for priority groups such as women and children fleeing domestic violence. Housing insecurity affects many Edmontonians, but Indigenous seniors are particularly at risk. So I really want to congratulate administration as well as the Métis Capital Housing Corporation, and as well as the long track record of supporting Métis families through culturally appropriate affordable housing. And we look forward to future partnerships with them as well as other Indigenous organizations in the city. With that, I'll call the vote.
We have all the votes.
And display the votes, please. That is carried. Responses to consular inquiries, none. Private reports, none. Motions pending, none. Notes of motions and motions without customary notice. Councillor Salvador?
So just pulling up the wording here. So at the next regular council meeting, I'll move that administration provide a memo that outlines the municipal recommendations contained in the Task Force for Housing and Climate's Blueprint for More and Better Housing report, including a summary of actions the city has been implementing, and identifies which recommendations could be considered to complement the city's existing policy and strategy direction.
Okay. Thank you. I see no other notes or motions. We are adjourned.